Hello, and thank you for your time. NanoBioLogics Research Corporation is an R&D technology and processing company, focused on developing and marketing innovative products that utilize nano-sized cannabinoids, as nanoemulsions that are manufactured by a proprietary process developed by NBRC. NBRC is active in the research and development of products that provide possible options to conventional pharmaceuticals. Currently that focus is centered on alternatives to the burgeoning problem of opiate addiction, and which is the focus of this short video.
115 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. More than car accidents, breast cancer, or guns.
Literally everyone we know knows somebody who has died of an overdose.
And 2.5 million Americans are currently struggling with opioid addiction.
It was completely hopeless where I just was like, suicide is all constant thought.
People need to take some aspirin sometimes and tough it out.
Before marijuana was banned in the 1970s, it was used for more than a century as a treatment for many disorders, including leprosy, epilepsy, and pain.
And so you have to consider that. I started looking at medical cannabis as an alternative to opioids.
In 1999, the California state government gave $10 million to Wallace and others to study the plant at the Center for Medicinal Cannabis Research in Southern California. Within a decade, there were half a dozen studies to show that cannabis could relieve certain kinds of pain. The results made the cautious doctor more comfortable. He started to use cannabis in his practice as an alternative to opioids. 80% of his patients, hundreds of patients, were weaned off of pills using pot.
How are you? Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too. Patients like Mark Schechter.
You feeling okay right now? Feeling pretty good.
Which is amazing when you consider Mark has an extremely painful spinal disorder that left him partially paralyzed 10 years ago.
The nerve pain was something I never experienced before in my life.
Relentless and chronic, doctors offered opioids, Percocet, OxyContin, fentanyl.
Roughly 10 tablets, different medications, 10 tablets a day, every day.
Every day. I had doubts how well they were working.
Remember, cannabis is made up of 400 plus ingredients. The two scientists know the most about are THC, which is the psychedelic component of cannabis, which makes you feel high. And then there is CBD, cannabidiol, the non-psychoactive chemical. We've told you about this one for years, especially how it stops chronic epileptic seizures in young children. There is also research showing that CBD is particularly helpful when it comes to pain. In fact, CBD can do something opioids cannot.
With opiates, you're talking about killing the pain, masking the pain, you're done.
Dr. Julie Holland edited the Pot Book, a complete guide to cannabis.
With medical cannabis, you're actually not just talking about decreasing pain, but you're decreasing inflammation.
That's because opioids do a good job of interfering with pain signals going to the brain. But cannabis works on two receptors, one that blocks that pain and one that decreases inflammation. It's ironic that cannabis can do more than opioids, yet prescription opioids are legal and cannabis is not. Historically, that was not the case. For centuries, both cannabis and poppy, two plants, the natural forms of marijuana and opioids, were commonly prescribed by doctors and dispensed at pharmacies. But that all changed in the 1930s. Opioids would go on to become a best-selling drug, and cannabis became increasingly fringe. In part because one kind of cannabis, called hemp, was a threat to big business. Hemp is a cheap fiber, good for making paper and canvas. It's more absorbent than cotton and could be used as a potential fuel.
So there were a lot of vested interests that sort of put cannabis down, took it away from the doctors, made it illegal.
And despite many efforts we've reported on for the past 5 years, marijuana is still an illegal Schedule I controlled substance, same as heroin and meth.
Cannabidiol is able to reverse.
But first, researchers using cannabis to open the door as a new way to break the chain of addiction. I heard started to focus on the CBD in cannabis to not only treat the underlying pain, but to also heal the brain.
that CBD normalizes that. So by normalizing glutamate, you can restructure and normalize back the impairments in the cellular, at the cellular level, at the molecular level.
Helping get rid of the cravings that keeps taking someone back.
Exactly, exactly.
No surprise, because for decades, studies have shown that both THC and CBD can help cancer patients in treatment.
Did it help you get off of the opiates?
Absolutely.
100%.
You hear about CBD being able to help people with their withdrawal type symptoms that they get trying to come off of opiates. You even hear, as you mentioned, that CBD can help repair the brain. Is that as promising as it sounds?
As a scientist, I definitely try to be optimistic.
Gruber also showed that their brains changed when off of pills and on pot. The brain's white matter, which is what allows it to communicate from one region to another, became better organized.
Those same folks show improvements in cognitive performance, so it's very exciting.
Exciting for opioid addicts, and now raising the question, could this help with other brain diseases, like Alzheimer's and dementia? The latest research shows that in lab-grown neurons, cannabis removes the protein that accumulates in the brains of these patients. Again, nothing else has been identified to do that. That doesn't surprise Kyle Turley. He was diagnosed with early CTE, a sort of Alzheimer's-like disease, and he is a firm believer CBD has helped return his memory, quell his anger, and ease his depression.
We have a potential resolve to allow individuals to live better lives.
It's a fair point, but the President's Commission did not recommend any research into medical marijuana nor any of its compounds, including non-psychoactive CBD. A mistake, a missed opportunity, according to researchers like Yasmin Hurd.
It should just be treated like everything else. Let it have its due process, and let's see what evidence is there for it treating or not treating a particular symptom or disorder.
Whether it's cannabidiol in Hurd's lab or cannabis prescribed by Dr. Wallace, it's marijuana as medicine, an idea shot down time and time again by the country's top law enforcement official.
I'm afraid that the public is not properly educated on some of the issues related to marijuana.
What would you say to the Attorney General?
I would say he's wrong. And I think that he needs to be educated. If he came and spent a week with me in my clinic, I think I could probably convince him otherwise.
When we visited here 5 years ago, it was a dream that's now about to become reality. GW Pharmaceutical CEO Justin Gover.
We're now just a matter of a couple of months away from potential approval and launch of the first ever plant-derived cannabis-based medicine in the United States.
The first of its kind, a prescription medicine made from cannabidiol, CBD. It's called Epidiolex, a liquid solution that potentially can help thousands of kids who suffer from epileptic seizures. Young children like Vivian Wilson and Charlotte Figge, who you met in our previous weed documentaries.
We'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way.
There!
When it came to finding the right treatment for their kids, these families were often left to trial and error.
So we just add more oil then, or we add more weed?
In some cases, even extracting the badly needed medicine in their own kitchens.
We can assure patients that they receive the same product day in and day out.
5 years ago, when we started reporting on this, things were desperate. Parents left with the choice of cannabis or death. Researchers weren't behind them. Society had turned its back. And now we are on the eve of a new drug being approved. Could the same happen with opioids? Could pot become a reasonable and accepted alternative to pills?
We have seen in early studies the potential for cannabinoids within the drug addiction field and within the opioid sparing and pain fields as well. So, like with many other areas, we're at the cusp of a new era of potential uses for cannabinoids.
FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb.
If you can demonstrate that a product based on marijuana or derivative of marijuana can be used as a safe and effective alternative for some condition, we want to look at that.
But cannabis-based pharmaceuticals for pain and addiction are still far off on the horizon.
It's an age-old debate, is this idea, are you trading one drug for another?
Even if we are doing a trade from a narcotic that people can overdose on to a plant that is non-narcotic and no one has ever overdosed on in the history of the world, you know, if that's the trade that we're making, then that sounds like not so bad a trade.
And Senator Brakey isn't the only one willing to make that deal.
Medical marijuana. Medical marijuana. A big announcement by Governor Murphy about medical marijuana.
One that I think should be considered, and that is recovery from opioid addiction.
Other states like New Jersey, Connecticut, and New Mexico are now considering similar legislation.
All people are asking for is the freedom to make their own choices with this, to try something for themselves as they are attempting to break the grip of addiction.
But now the struggle continues for researchers to catch up, to gather data, and the scientific evidence to once again prove the power of this plant.
Parents with children suffering from severe epilepsy are calling on the FDA for help. Molly Shen is here with more on the treatment that could help with seizures.
I met with some of these families before, Mary, and this could be a big week for those parents. For the first time, the FDA says a medicine made from marijuana plants appears to reduce seizures. That medicine is called cannabidiol, or CBD oil, which some parents have used for years to treat their children with epilepsy. But no version has ever been approved, so doctors can't always prescribe it. CBD is one of more than 100 chemicals found in the cannabis plant, but it doesn't get users high because it does not contain THC. In a draft report today, the FDA says a form of CBD oil cut the number of monthly seizures by about 40%. A panel will vote on Thursday on whether to recommend approving it, which could lead to full FDA acceptance.
In good health, marijuana-based treatment for pediatric epilepsy is one step closer to FDA approval.
Our Dr. Frank McGeorge is here with a closer look at what this drug is and why some families are really so desperate to get it.
Absolutely, Karen and Jason. You know, today, FDA advisors voted on whether to recommend approval for the drug that's been hailed as a breakthrough. Now, the vote was unanimously in favor, with advisors saying the cannabis-based oil has clear benefits for children with uncontrollable seizures. At the Food and Drug Administration Thursday, a panel of advisors listened to story after story of parents' heartbreak over their children's severe form of epilepsy.
The dreams that I've had for Riley have slowly drifted away over the years because of unstoppable seizures.
Some kids enduring more than 1,000 seizures a year.
Watching my daughter suffer daily rips a little piece of my heart out every day.
Now there's hope in the form of a cannabis oil called cannabidiol, or CBD. In studies, CBD oil from GW Pharmaceuticals was shown to reduce seizures dramatically. It's derived from marijuana, but does not contain THC, the part that gives recreational users a high. The cannabis oil has helped kids like Jack Zielkowski. Before CBD, skateboarding and biking was unheard of because Jack was having up to 20 seizures a month.
You just see the light in his eyes it just vanishes.
Soon other children in Jack's situation may be able to get the CBD oil, now that advisors to the FDA have overwhelmingly voted for the treatment's approval.
For the first time ever, the FDA has backed a cannabis-based drug, Epidiolex. A 13-member U.S. Food and Drug Committee unanimously voted to recommend Epidiolex, which is an epilepsy drug made from cannabis. GW Pharmaceuticals, a London-based company, developed the drug. Epidiolex is an oral solution made of pure plant-derived cannabidiol, or CBD. GW says the drug focuses on treating patients with severe forms of epilepsy. The FDA says despite the move, it has, quote, not approved marijuana as a safe and effective drug for any indication, unquote. The FDA will make their final decision on approval in June.
An advisory committee at the FDA unanimously approved an experimental drug made from marijuana to treat seizures associated with epilepsy. The Peripheral and Central Nervous System Drugs Advisory Committee approved the medication 13-0, making Epidiolex the first plant-derived cannabidiol medicine for prescription use in the United States. The drug is specifically tailored to treat two rare forms of epilepsy that afflict children. But Epidiolex doesn't contain psychoactive compounds commonly associated with marijuana use. Instead, it uses a compound called CBD to treat seizures.